The Galactic Historical Archives classify the Earth invasion of 2187 as the single most catastrophic military blunder in the recorded history of the Zorn Imperium. This classification is not contested by any surviving participants. From the vantage point of the Zorn High Command, Earth seemed like the perfect target, a backwater planet on the rim of an unremarkable spiral galaxy, populated by bipeds who had barely managed to establish a few pathetic outposts on their own moon and neighboring planet. Their technology was primitive, their global political structure fragmented, and their primary cultural exports appeared to be cat videos and something called reality television. You're telling me they spend hours watching other members of their species perform mundane tasks? Admiral Glex Thornak had asked during the initial briefing, his 7 eye stalks quivering with disbelief. Yes, Admiral, replied Intelligence Officer Mipa Vox, her tentacles nervously shuffling through her notes. They appear to be particularly fascinated by watching each other attempt to find mates, prepare food, and engage in trivial competitions for paper currency. The War Council chamber erupted in the bubbling sound that passed for laughter among the Zorn elite. The Supreme Overlord Drex himself had to rehydrate his breathing membranes before regaining composure. And these are the beings we're concerned about conquering, Drex wheezed, still recovering. Next you'll tell me they communicate by making mouth noises at each other. Mipa hesitated. Well actually sir, this sent another wave of convulsions through the council. The decision was unanimous and enthusiastic. Earth would make an excellent addition to the Imperium's collection of subjugated worlds, providing both resources and entertainment value. The invasion force was assembled with typical Zorn efficiency. 9,900 ships, carrying over 12 million troops, equipped with the most advanced weapons systems the Imperium's vast resources could provide. The fleet stretched across space for what Earth astronomers would measure as roughly the distance between their planet and its star. Massive carriers housed swarms of fighter craft, while Planet Cracker-class dreadnoughts loomed like metal moons among the armada. It was, by every metric, approximately 9,850 ships more than necessary to conquer a pre-warp civilization. Better safe than sorry, Admiral Thornak had declared at the launch ceremony to thunderous applause. We shall overwhelm them with such force that resistance will be not merely futile, but laughably brief. How very wrong he was. The first unrecorded warning sign came when advanced scout drones sent to catalog Earth's defenses suddenly ceased transmitting. The monitoring technicians assumed it was a simple equipment malfunction. After all, what could primitives without energy weapons possibly do to Zorn surveillance technology? As it turned out, quite a lot. Not that anyone in the invasion fleet knew this yet. Admiral Thornak's command ship, the Inevitable Conquest, led the armada toward Earth with the absolute confidence of someone who has never encountered a toddler with a crayon near an expensive white sofa. Begin the final approach sequence, Thornak ordered, settling his gelatinous mass into his command chair. And prepare the standard "your planet now belongs to us" as announcement. Let's at least give them the courtesy of knowing who their new masters are before we start the occupation. His executive officer, Commander Plex Sorbonne, saluted crisply with 3 of his limbs. Yes, Admiral. The translation matrix has been calibrated for their primary languages. We'll be broadcasting in approximately 300 of their dialects. Excellent. Thornak nodded, his eye stalks swiveling to the main view screen where the blue-green orb of Earth was growing larger. This will be the easiest conquest in my distinguished career. The invasion fleet accelerated toward its target, blissfully unaware that the residents of Earth had a long and storied history of responding to threats in ways that defied all logical prediction. They were about to learn this lesson the hard way. Very, very much the hard way. The Inevitable Conquest was the crown jewel of the Zorn fleet. A behemoth of engineering excess that looked like someone had taken every sci-fi villain's flagship design, thrown them in a blender and hit intimidate instead of puree. Covered in unnecessary spikes, adorned with gratuitous red lighting, and shaped vaguely like a menacing hand making an obscene gesture, it screamed. We're the bad guys in a way that would make even the most unsubtle space opera director say, "Tone it down a bit, will you?" Admiral Thornak prided himself on running a tight ship. His bridge crew consisted of the Imperium's finest, or at least those with the most impressive family connections. Status report. Thornak barked as the fleet decelerated into Earth's solar system. Lieutenant Quib Melnar, navigation officer and nephew to the Supreme Overlord's third cousin twice removed, looked up from his console. We've entered the target system, Admiral. Current distance from primary conquest objective, approximately 400 million cracks, about 1 astronomical unit in local measurement. Excellent. Thornak's eye stalks quivered with anticipation. Weapon status, all planet crackers primed and ready, sir, reported Commander Sorbonne. Atmospheric disruptors charged. genetic resequencers calibrated for human DNA, deplorable propaganda broadcasts prepared, reality TV jamming signals standing by. And our troops? Thornak asked, bubbling with satisfaction at the thoroughness of their preparations. General Drac Wazel, a grizzled veteran of 17 planetary conquests who resembled nothing so much as an angry potato with medals, harumphed loudly. 12 million invasion troops ready for deployment, sir. The elite squishers are particularly eager to test their new exo-armor. The squishers were the pride of the Zorn military. Genetically enhanced super soldiers whose primary combat strategy involved dropping from orbit and landing on enemies with bone-crushing force. They were essentially living meteors with bad attitudes. I've briefed the troops extensively on human weaknesses. General Wazel continued, scrolling through his datapad. Their fragile skeletons are internal rather than external. Their visual receptors can't see in ultraviolet or detect movement in the 8th dimension. And most pathetically, they require regular periods of unconsciousness to function. This last point caused several officers to vibrate with amusement. Imagine, Lieutenant Melnar snickered, being completely vulnerable and unaware of your surroundings for nearly a third of each planetary rotation. How have they survived as a species? Admiral Thornak waved a dismissive tentacle. Pure luck, obviously. Well, their luck ends today. At that moment, Chief Science Officer Blynn Topic cleared her throat tubes nervously. Unlike most of the command staff, Topic had actually done some research on humans beyond watching intercepted television signals. Admiral, if I may, there are some anomalies in our intelligence that might warrant caution. Thornak's eye stalks swiveled toward the scientist with visible annoyance. Speak plainly, Topic. What anomalies? Well, sir, Topic began, her bioluminescent spots dimming anxiously. Humans appear to have an unusual psychological profile. They show remarkable adaptability in crisis situations. Also, their entertainment broadcasts suggest a peculiar fixation with scenarios involving alien invasions, which they invariably repel through improbable means. General Wazel emitted a derisive snort. Fiction, obviously. Wishful thinking from a species that knows it's destined for subjugation. Furthermore, Topic continued undeterred. Our scout drones have detected strange energy signatures that don't align with our understanding of their technological development. Thornak's patience was visibly thinning. Are you suggesting these primitives could pose an actual threat to our armada? Need I remind you, we have nearly 10,000 ships at our disposal. No sir, not exactly, Topic backpedaled, her skin flushing a submissive pale blue. I merely suggest we approach with standard caution protocols rather than the overwhelming force approach that has brought the Imperium 300 successful conquests. Interrupted Commander Zorban. The science officer's concerns are noted, but hardly relevant to a species that still relies on chemical propulsion. Thornak nodded emphatically, causing his eye stalks to bob like drunken snakes. Precisely. We will proceed as planned. He turned to Communications Officer Zilp Nantar. Broadcast the standard surrender demands on all frequencies. Give them 1 local hour to capitulate before we begin the first wave. Nantar's appendages danced across her console. Transmission ready, sir. Though our linguists note that Earth has an unusual number of languages for a single species. Should we prioritize? Send it in all of them. Thornak said with a dismissive wave. It makes no difference. Their answer will be irrelevant, as the outcome is already determined. The message was simple, and had worked on countless worlds before. People of Earth, your planet is now property of the Zorn Imperium. Resistance is both futile and inadvisable. Surrender immediately to enjoy the privileges of being subjugated by the universe's most advanced civilization. Failure to comply will result in progressive planetary punishment until submission is achieved. You have 1 hour to respond. That is all. As the transmission beamed toward Earth, the bridge crew settled in for what they expected to be a brief, uneventful wait. I've already selected my vacation spot after the conquest, Lieutenant Melnar said casually. Something called Bora Bora. Apparently it's where humans go to do nothing productive while consuming excessive calories. I've got my eye on Switzerland, added Weapons Officer Grak Pentok. The indigenous fauna, cows, I believe they're called, look deliciously docile. Admiral Thornak merely smiled, already imagining how impressive Conqueror of Earth would look on his service record. After all, what could possibly go wrong? The answer, as it turned out, was everything. Absolutely everything. The hour allocated for Earth's surrender came and went. The bridge of the inevitable conquest fell silent. as all eye stalks turned expectantly toward Communications Officer Nantar. "Well?" Admiral Thornak demanded. "What is their response?" Nantar's appendages fluttered nervously across her console. "That's odd, sir. We've received no official response." "No response?" Thornak's central eye stalk twitched in confusion. "None at all? Not even a panicked plea for mercy?" "Nothing formal, sir," Nantar replied. "Although we are picking up increased chatter on their communication networks. Most of it seems to be something called social media's reactions. Our translation algorithms are struggling with much of it. But terms like hoax, viral marketing stunt, and killer CGI appear frequently." General Wazel harumphed. "Denial. First stage of submission. There's also a significant uptick in something called memes," Nantar continued, her confusion evident. "Humans appear to be altering our transmission with humorous captions. They're particularly focused on your eye stalks, Admiral." Thornak's skin flushed a dangerous purple. "They dare mock the appearance of their conqueror. I believe this one compares you to something called a drunk octopus. Wanting to fight," Nantar said, projecting an image that caused several junior officers to quickly suppress their amusement. "Enough," Thornak bellowed. "This insolence will not stand. General Wazel, commence Operation Undeniable Superiority." Wazel's face folds contorted into what passed for a smile among his kind. "With pleasure, Admiral." He activated the fleet-wide command channel. "All ships deployment order Zeta Crush. Squisher units, prepare for orbital drop. Primary targets are their leadership centers, defense installations," and he paused for dramatic effect. "Any establishment creating these memes." The massive fleet began to disperse into the pre-planned invasion formation, a maneuver the Zorn military had perfected through centuries of conquest. 500 ships moved to establish orbital dominance. 300 specialized craft began atmospheric entry procedures to deploy the Squisher troops. The remainder formed a defensive perimeter to intercept any pathetic counterattack the humans might attempt. It was textbook. It was flawless. It was about to go spectacularly, catastrophically wrong. The first indication came when scout vessel Zippy Destruction failed to report after atmospheric entry. Probably just communication interference from their primitive radio networks, Lieutenant Melnar suggested with a dismissive wave. Then assault carrier definite oppression went silent. "Minor technical glitch," Commander Zorban assured everyone. "These things happen during invasions." When 12 more ships stopped responding in rapid succession, even Admiral Thornak had to admit something unexpected was occurring. "What in the name of the Supreme Overlord's 7 sacred tentacles is happening down there?" he demanded, all eye stalks frantically swiveling between readouts. Science Officer Topik, who had been monitoring sensor data with growing alarm, spoke up. "Sir, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. They appear to be some form of directed energy weapons." "Impossible," General Wazel sputtered. "Our intelligence confirmed they have no such technology." "Well, sir," Topik replied dryly, "someone should inform the weapons currently vaporizing our ships of that fact." The situation deteriorated rapidly. The first wave of Squisher troops, dropping from orbit in their state-of-the-art exo-armor, reported chaotic conditions upon landing. "Command, this is Squisher Squad Alpha," came a panicked transmission. "We've landed in a region designated Texas, and are encountering heavy resistance. The locals possess primitive but surprisingly effective projectile weapons and appear to be enthusiastic about using them. They're shouting something about Second Amendment rights, and oh, eternal void. They have something called a monster truck." The transmission cut off abruptly. Similar reports flooded in from around the planet. Squisher Squad Delta, landing in what was supposed to be an uninhabited region called Australia, reported being attacked by wildlife so venomous and aggressive that their exo-armor's threat assessment systems crashed trying to catalog the dangers. Squisher Squad Gamma, touching down in a region called Russia, simply sent a brief message. "The locals are drinking our hydraulic fluid and challenging us to something called squat contest," before going silent. Admiral Thornak was beside himself. "This is impossible, incomprehensible, inconvenient." "Sir," Commander Zorban reported grimly, "we've lost contact with over 300 ships. The humans appear to have defense systems we didn't detect during reconnaissance." "How?" Thornak demanded. "How?" Science Officer Topik's bioluminescent spots pulsed with what might have been a suppressed "I told you so" glow. "Sir, I'm analyzing their defense grid now. It appears they've been concealing their true technological capabilities. Quite effectively, I might add." On the main view screen, the horrified bridge crew watched as one of their mighty dreadnoughts was disabled by what appeared to be a swarm of small agile craft. What are those? Thornak whispered, his voice hollow with disbelief. According to intercepted communications, Nantar replied. They're called crop dusters, piloted by entities identified as pissed-off farmers and weekend pilots with something to prove. Another alert sounded. Weapons Officer Pentok reported in a strangled voice. Sir, our planet crackers are being hacked. Something called Anonymous and bored teenagers are flooding our systems with something called Rick Astley. The mighty Zorn invasion force, terror of galaxies, subjugator of worlds, was being systematically dismantled by a civilization that still found fart jokes entertaining. In the resulting chaos, no one on the bridge noticed a small blinking light on an auxiliary console, a proximity alert warning of something approaching the inevitable conquest at high speed. Something small, seemingly insignificant, yet destined to change the course of the invasion. It was a delivery drone carrying a pizza, and piloting it, whistling tunelessly and completely unaware of his imminent place in interstellar history, was Dave Gutierrez, who had taken this job to pay off his student loans. Dave Gutierrez had been delivering pizzas for Orbital Eats for exactly 3 weeks and 2 days. The company's slogan, "From our thermosphere to your living room in 30 minutes or it's free," was the bane of his existence. Today's delivery was particularly annoying. A 16-topping Monster Galaxy pizza ordered by someone at the International Space Station. The customer had specifically requested extra pineapple, which Dave considered a crime against pizza that should be punishable by exile to Mercury. As he navigated his delivery drone through the cluttered orbital lanes around Earth, Dave was preoccupied with 3 things. The tip he hoped to get, the Interplanetary Delivery Guild exam he needed to study for, and the bizarre conspiracy theory podcast playing in his earbuds about an alien invasion happening right now. Yeah, right, Dave muttered to himself. Aliens choosing today of all days to invade. That would be just my luck. The navigation system beeped, indicating an unexpected obstacle ahead. Dave glanced up from his playlist selection and frowned. According to his readout, he was approaching an unregistered object roughly the size of Manhattan. Stupid billionaires and their space yachts, Dave grumbled, adjusting his course. Always parked in the delivery lanes. Aboard the inevitable Conquest, alarms were blaring as the ship's defense systems detected an approaching object. Status report, Admiral Thornak demanded, his voice cracking with stress. Is it another human weapon? Lieutenant Melnar studied his console with deepening confusion. Uncertain, sir. It's small, appears minimally armed, and is emitting heat signatures consistent with melted cheese. Before anyone could process this information, Dave's delivery drone made contact with the inevitable Conquest's hull, specifically with its poorly shielded secondary atmospheric intake. The tiny drone, built by the lowest bidder and maintained with all the care of a gas station bathroom, did what any self-respecting piece of budget equipment would do when confronted with highly advanced alien technology. It immediately and catastrophically failed. Its power core ruptured, causing a surge that propagated through the Conquest's environmental systems. This wouldn't have been a problem if Commander Zorban hadn't ignored the safety protocols requiring isolation of critical systems, all to make room for his personal collection of human soap operas downloaded during their approach. Throughout the massive flagship, life support flickered, gravity plating went haywire, and most critically, the ventilation system began pumping the unmistakable aroma of pizza, specifically 16-topping pizza with extra pineapple, through every compartment. The effect on the Zorn was immediate and devastating. Their highly evolved olfactory senses, capable of detecting particles at the parts per trillion level, were overwhelmed by the potent combination of pepperoni, jalapenos, anchovies, and the particularly offensive pineapple. Ships near the Conquest reported seeing crew members pressed against viewport windows, eye stalks wide with horror. What is that smell? Thornak gasped, all 7 eye stalks watering profusely. Science Officer Topik, whose research into humans had included their cuisine, realized the danger first. It's a chemical weapon, she shrieked. Evacuate. Evacuate. Meanwhile, Dave found himself unexpectedly drifting through what appeared to be an alien spaceship. The collision had launched him from his drone, pizza box, still miraculously intact in his hands. His first coherent thought was that his delivery was definitely going to be late now. His second was that his drone insurance definitely didn't cover collision with extraterrestrial invasion fleet. Hello? Dave called out, floating down a corridor lined with what looked like hysterical octopus-potato hybrid creatures. Anyone order a pizza? The Zorn crew, seeing a human suddenly appear inside their impenetrable flagship carrying what they now believed to be a biological weapon, did what any reasonable highly trained military personnel would do. They panicked spectacularly. Human infiltrator. Someone screamed, triggering the ship's internal defense protocols. Security doors slammed shut. Emergency containment fields activated. The ship-wide communication system began broadcasting evacuation orders in 17 Zorn dialects, none of which Dave understood. "I'm guessing that's a no on the pizza," Dave muttered, watching in bewilderment as alien crew members fought each other to reach escape pods. Back on the bridge, Admiral Thornak was trying desperately to regain control of both his ship and his dignity. "Override the evacuation order," he commanded, his voice barely audible over the alarms. "It's just one human with some kind of odorous device." "Sir," Communications Officer Nantar interrupted, "we're receiving distress calls from throughout the fleet. Apparently the humans have deployed similar agents against multiple ships." This was not entirely accurate. What was actually happening was that Earth's various military forces, finally accepting that the alien invasion was real and not an elaborate prank by that annoying tech billionaire with too much time on his hands, had begun to respond. Their methods were as varied as they were bewildering to the Zorn. In orbit above what humans called the United States, a hastily deployed team of Space Force personnel was attaching bumper stickers reading, "If you can read this, you're about to be freedom to Zorn vessels." Over Britain, Royal Air Force pilots were engaging alien fighters while maintaining impeccably polite radio chatter. "Terribly sorry to shoot you down, but you are invading, you know. Nothing personal." Above Australia, someone had apparently convinced the aliens that drop bears were real and could survive in space, leading to an entire battle group abandoning their vessels after hairy orbital predators were reportedly spotted on their hulls. These turned out to be confused and very angry spacesuited koalas that had escaped from a research habitat on a nearby station. None of these actions would have been particularly effective against a properly prepared invasion force. But the Zorn, already destabilized by their initial failures, and now faced with the inexplicable fact that their sophisticated sensors couldn't distinguish between actual human military responses and what appeared to be impromptu pranks, were coming unglued. General Wazel, trying to maintain some semblance of military discipline, bellowed over the command channel. "All units, hold formation. These are primitive diversion tactics. Their technology is inferior. Their strategies make no sense. They have no unified command structure. They put fruit on pizza. They cannot possibly defeat us." But his exhortations fell on increasingly despondent ears as reports continued to flood in of Zorn ships being disabled by everything from actual Earth military weapons to what several panic captains described as flying metal birds covered in corrosive white and green liquid. These were in fact just pigeons with unfortunate timing and poor digestive control. Meanwhile, Dave Gutierrez had accidentally triggered the inevitable Conquest's internal navigation system while trying to find a bathroom. The massive flagship was now on a collision course with its own support fleet, its engines responding to Dave's casual comment of, "Man, I really need to get closer to those other ships to ask for directions." As chaos engulfed the invasion force, Dave floated onto the bridge, still holding his pizza box, now cold, but somehow even more aromatic. "Hey, so, I'm super lost," he announced to the stunned command crew. "Anyone here speak English? And more importantly, anyone want this pizza? I'm definitely not getting a tip now anyway." Admiral Thornak, Supreme Commander of the greatest invasion force the galaxy had ever seen, pride of the Zorn Imperium, looked at the humans standing before him, a creature whose primary concern appeared to be a failed food delivery rather than the interplanetary or conflict raging around them, and had the sudden crushing realization that the Zorn had made a terrible mistake in coming to Earth. Admiral Thornak had faced many challenges during his distinguished career conquering supposedly inferior species. He'd put down rebellions, crushed resistance movements, and once survived an assassination attempt involving 3 angry counselors and a ceremonial fruit peeler. But nothing, absolutely nothing had prepared him for Dave Gutierrez and his pizza. "You," Thornak pointed a trembling tentacle at Dave, "have you been sent here to negotiate Earth's surrender?" Dave looked up from his phone where he'd been leaving a 1-star review for the navigation app that had guided him into an alien warship. No man, I'm just trying to deliver this pizza. It was supposed to go to the International Space Station but your big ship thing was in the way." The bridge crew exchanged bewildered glances. Was this some kind of sophisticated psychological warfare? A human infiltrator so deeply committed to his cover story that he genuinely seemed more concerned with food delivery than the fate of his planet. "Listen," Dave continued, Oblivious to the confusion he was causing, "My boss is gonna kill me if I don't complete this delivery or at least get the pizza back. Any chance you guys have like a teleporter or something? Or maybe just point me toward Earth and I'll kick off from here." Science Officer Topik, whose fascination with humans had now evolved into a kind of horrified respect, whispered to Admiral Thornak. "Sir, I believe he's genuinely not part of their defense forces. He appears to be what humans call a civilian engaged in the gig economy." "Impossible," General Wazel growled. "No species would allow untrained non-combatants to float freely through a battle zone." "Has anyone checked the news?" Dave asked, scrolling through his phone. "Apparently there's an alien invasion happening right now. My roommate Kyle keeps sending me memes about it." He held up his screen displaying an image of the inevitable conquest photoshopped to look like a cosmic vacuum cleaner. "Gotta admit that's pretty good." Admiral Thornak was about to respond when the ship lurched violently. The collision course Dave had accidentally set was now bearing fruit. "Impact imminent," Lieutenant Melnar shrieked, his eye stalks practically tying themselves in knots. "We're going to hit the relentless oppression and at least 3 support vessels." "Evasive maneuvers," Thornak bellowed. "Navigation is locked out," Zorban reported, his appendages frantically working the controls. "Something has overridden our command protocols." All eyes turned to Dave, who was now using his phone as a mirror to fix his hair. "What?" he said, noticing their stares. "Oh, the ship-moving thing. Yeah, I just told your computer to follow the shortest path to those other ships. Your voice recognition system is actually pretty good, though it kept asking if I wanted to commence planetary bombardment when I was looking for a bathroom. Weird feature for a GPS." Before anyone could process this information, the inevitable conquest scraped against its sister ship, the relentless oppression. The impact wasn't catastrophic, but it was enough to trigger both vessels' automated defense systems, which immediately identified each other as threats. What followed was the space equivalent of 2 drunken bodybuilders accidentally bumping into each other at a bar and proceeding to destroy the entire establishment while insisting the other one started it. Point defense lasers fired. Shield generators overloaded. Secondary explosions cascaded through both ships. And through it all, Dave calmly sat cross-legged in midair, munching on a slice of now-cold pizza. "You know," he observed, between bites, "for super-advanced aliens, you guys really should consider better safety features. My delivery drone has automatic collision avoidance, and it cost like $20. Admiral Thornak had now moved beyond anger, beyond fear, beyond even despair. He had reached a state of transcendent bewilderment. "Who are you people?" he whispered. "I mean, I'm just Dave." Dave shrugged. "Pizza delivery guy, part-time community college student, full-time disappointed my parents. Nothing special." "Sir," Communications Officer Nantar interrupted, her voice hollow with dread. "Fleet status update, we've lost contact with over 5,000 ships." 5,000. Thornak's voice rose to a pitch previously achievable only by excited dolphin calves. "Yes sir. Most appear to be engaged in or attacking each other due to chain reaction friendly fire incidents. Others report being boarded by human civilians, asking for selfies, or trying to sell them something called extended warranties for your spaceship." If the Zorn had been capable of crying, Thornak would have been sobbing uncontrollably. Instead, his breathing membranes simply deflated with a sad wheezing sound. How is this happening? "We are the Zorn Imperium, we have conquered 300 worlds. Our technology is millennia beyond Earth's capabilities." "Yeah, but you guys clearly never had to deal with Earth traffic," Dave pointed out. "Or telemarketers. Or people who talk during movies. Honestly, those things prepare you for anything." Science Officer Topik, who had been analyzing data from the remaining functional ships, cleared her throat tubes. "Sir, I've completed my analysis of human behavior during this conflict. I believe I understand what's happening." "Enlighten us," Thornak said flatly. "The humans don't have a unified defense strategy because they don't need one. Their entire civilization is built on chaos, improvisation, and what they call winging it. They're not following a plan because having a plan would actually make them less effective against an enemy that expects logical behavior." She gestured toward Dave, who was now attempting to connect to the ship's entertainment system to watch something called reality TV. "Their strength isn't their technology or their military prowess," Topik continued. "It's their completely unpredictable nature and their seemingly infinite ability to create confusion. They're not trying to defeat us, they're simply doing what they always do, and it's driving our systems and protocols into complete failure." General Wazel, whose military experience suddenly seemed woefully inadequate, muttered, How do you develop tactics against a species that doesn't use tactics? The answer, as it turned out, was you don't. You retreat, rapidly and without shame. Admiral Thornak made the hardest decision of his career. All ships, this is Admiral Thornak, initiate emergency withdrawal protocol. I repeat, all ships withdraw immediately from Earth space. This is not a drill. As the evacuation order spread through what remained of the fleet, Dave finally looked up from his phone with mild interest. Wait, you guys are leaving already. But you just got here. Didn't even try the local cuisine. He paused, then added hopefully, need a ride home. My shift ends in 20 minutes. The look Thornak gave him would have withered a lesser being. Dave just shrugged and returned to his phone, completely unaffected by what would have been considered a grave insult in Zorn culture. And that, perhaps, was the perfect encapsulation of why the invasion had failed so spectacularly. The humans simply refused to recognize when they were supposed to be intimidated. As the battered remnants of the once mighty armada limped away from Earth, Admiral Thornak had one final question for Dave. Human, he said, his voice heavy with defeat. Tell me truthfully, what is your planet's actual defense system? How did you defeat us so thoroughly? Dave looked up, genuinely puzzled. Defense system? Dude, I honestly have no idea what you're talking about. I was just trying to deliver a pizza. And that, Thornak realized with dawning horror, was exactly the point. Earth didn't need a defense system. Earth had humans. It was more than enough. 2 standard Zorn weeks later, approximately 17 Earth days, 4 hours, and 38 minutes. Admiral Thornak stood before the High Council of the Zorn Imperium, delivering what was undoubtedly the most humiliating report of his career. The council chamber was unnaturally quiet. Even the ceremonial bubbling pools had been silenced for this unprecedented session. The 17 surviving ships, all that remained of the mighty armada of 9,900, floated in orbit above the Zorn homeworld, their battered hulls a testament to the catastrophe that had befallen the invasion force. So let me ensure I understand correctly. Supreme Overlord Drex said, his voice dangerously calm. Our invasion force was not defeated by superior technology. No, your supremacy, Thornak replied, keeping his eye stalks respectfully lowered. Nor by advanced military tactics. No, your supremacy. Not even by a unified planetary defense system. No, your supremacy. Drex's breathing membranes inflated to twice their normal size, a sign of extreme agitation. Then please explain, in terms simple enough for even the maintenance drones to understand, how the entire invasion force was decimated. Thornak swallowed nervously, a difficult feat considering Zorn physiology. The humans, your supremacy. They don't make sense. Science Officer Tulpik, who had been granted special permission to address the council, stepped forward. If I may elaborate, your supremacy. Our preliminary assessment of humans categorized them as a Type 3 pre-unified civilization, indicating predictable behavioral patterns and technological limitations. This assessment was, she paused, searching for a diplomatic term, catastrophically incorrect. She activated a holographic display showing footage captured during the invasion. The council watched in horrified fascination as scenes played out, human civilians taking selfies with bewildered Zorn soldiers, a group of elderly humans offering cookies to a heavily armed assault team, someone trying to sell real estate on Mars to a Zorn captain, and most disturbingly, a human child who had somehow reprogrammed a Zorn battle mech to play something called Fortnite dances. As you can see, Tulpik continued, humans do not respond to threats according to any known psychological model. When confronted with our invasion force, many of them simply incorporated it into their daily routines. Commander Zorban, one of the few senior officers to survive, added, their planet has no unified government, no cohesive defensive strategy, and technological capabilities that range from primitive to surprisingly advanced, sometimes within the same device. It's as if they're deliberately disorganized. And this pizza delivery human, Drex said, pronouncing the unfamiliar words with distaste. He was not a specially trained infiltration agent. Thornak's eye stalks drooped further. No, your supremacy. All evidence suggests he was exactly what he claimed, a civilian whose primary concern was completing a food delivery and avoiding the displeasure of his supervisor. The council chamber erupted in chittering murmurs of disbelief. Drex silenced them with a wave of his ceremonial appendage. What happened to this Dave after you ordered the retreat? Was somewhat inadvertently. Brought him with us, Thornak admitted. He was still aboard the inevitable Conquest when emergency hyperspace protocols were activated. By the time we realized, it was too late to return him. And where is this human now? Drex demanded. A side door opened, and Dave Gutierrez strolled into the Zorn High Council chamber, wearing his Orbital Eats uniform, and scrolling through his phone. Hey, is the Wi-Fi password still the same in here? I'm trying to update my status to chilling with aliens, might conquer later. E.T. The council members recoiled in collective horror, some activating personal shields, others frantically signaling for security. Relax, everyone, Dave said, waving dismissively. I come in peace and all that. Actually, I come with a message. He pulled a crumpled paper from his pocket. My boss says I'm fired for losing the company drone and failing to deliver the pizza. Also, humanity has no idea you guys tried to invade. They think all those ships were part of some viral marketing campaign for a new streaming series about aliens. He looked around the ornate chamber and whistled appreciatively. Nice setup you got here, by the way. Very evil Empire chic. Love the bubbling pools. Great touch. Supreme Overlord Drex, ruler of 12 star systems and conqueror of hundreds of worlds, found himself completely at a loss for words. Finally he managed to ask, your species doesn't know we attempted to conquer them? Nah. Dave shrugged. Most people thought it was either a publicity stunt or mass hallucination. There's already 3 documentaries claiming it was faked by the government, and some tech billionaire is selling merchandise saying I survived the alien invasion, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. But, the destruction, the battles in your orbit, the squisher troops we deployed. Yeah, about those big dudes in the armor. They're all applying for asylum. Apparently they really like Earth and have already gotten sponsorship deals from energy drink companies. As for the battles, people just assumed it was either satellites exploding or a really elaborate fireworks show. Some influencers are actually mad they missed the chance to live stream it. The collective bewilderment in the council chamber was almost palpable. Drex turned to his advisors. Is this normal? Can an entire species just ignore an invasion? Science Officer Topik, who had spent the journey back studying everything she could about humans, nodded gravely. It appears so, Your Supremacy. Humans have an extraordinary capacity for normalization and selective attention. They routinely ignore imminent threats, like climate change and reality televisions, while becoming obsessed with trivial matters like celebrity relationships and sports team performance. Dave nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, that sounds about right. Speaking of which, did I miss the Lunar Cup finals? Earth vs Mars colony is always a good match. Supreme Overlord Drex had made many difficult decisions during his reign. He had ordered the subjugation of rebellious worlds, approved controversial resource extraction methods, and once banned a particularly annoying form of music throughout the Imperium. But the decision he was about to make might be his most important. The Zorn Imperium, he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber, will henceforth classify Earth as a prohibited contact zone. No Zorn vessel or citizen shall approach within 1 light-year of the Sol system. This human's memory will be wiped, and he will be returned to his planet with suitable compensation for his inconvenience. Dave looked up from his phone. Wait. Memory wiped? That doesn't sound fun. Also, can I get that compensation in cash? I've got student loans. Furthermore, Drex continued, ignoring Dave's interruption, all records of this invasion attempt will be expunged from our historical archives. We shall never speak of this defeat again. Oh come on, Dave protested. At least let me keep some evidence. No one's going to believe I partied with aliens. He paused thoughtfully. Though my roommate Kyle did once convince everyone he dated a famous pop star, and his only evidence was a badly photoshopped picture. So maybe humanity's standards for proof aren't that high. As the council session concluded, and security personnel led Dave away, he went willingly after being promised space souvenirs, and something equivalent to Earth currency. Admiral Thornak approached Science Officer Tulpik privately. Do you think they'll ever become a threat to us? He asked quietly. If they continue to develop, and eventually master interstellar travel. Tulpik considered the question carefully. I don't believe they would intentionally seek conflict with us or any other species. However, she hesitated. However, based on my observations, I'm not convinced they would even notice they were in a galactic conflict. They might accidentally conquer half the known universe while trying to establish a convenient vacation spot or looking for better takeout options. Thornak shuddered, his eye stalks quivering with residual trauma. Then the Overlord's decision is correct. Let us hope we never encounter humans again. 3 Earth weeks later, Dave Gutierrez woke up in his apartment with a splitting headache, 17 different alien souvenirs he couldn't quite remember acquiring, and an interstellar currency card with enough value to pay off his student loans and buy a small moon. His phone had one new message from an unknown number: pizza delivery completed successfully. Rating 5 stars. Never contact us again. Dave shrugged, made himself coffee, and logged into his new job application portal. Orbital Eats had fired him, but there was an interesting opening at something called Interstellar Courier Services that looked promising. As he filled out the application, he couldn't shake the feeling that his next delivery might take him even farther from home. He was surprisingly okay with that. Meanwhile, in the classified archives of the Zorn Imperium, a new entry appeared in the existential threats database, given the highest security clearance possible. It contained just 3 words: humans, pizza. Dave,